So the guy that I have for the Lakers here, and he's a stand-in essentially for what do the Lakers do, is Talen Horton-Tucker. As we've mentioned earlier, he's the fourth guy that we're going to talk about here out of 11. Talen Horton-Tucker is a fascinating player. He had a couple of really strong games to start the year and has not been very good since then. He's on a $10 million deal. I think there are teams out there that would value his upside. I personally am not one of those people. I'm not a huge Talen Horton-Tucker fan. He's 21 years old. He's still one of the youngest players in the NBA. He's 6'4" with 7'1" wingspan and has some real ability off the bounce. He has never really improved defensively in the way that you would think his tool set would, as someone who's super strong, has that kind of length, and could potentially be. Talen Horton-Tucker's contract is really the only way the Lakers have to get better, barring a crazy Russell Westbrook move that I, again, just don't see. What do we do with this? Like, that's kind of like, I don't know what to do with the Lakers, I guess, is where I'm stuck.
Do the Lakers have to win the title this year and therefore have to sacrifice THT this year? Because if they have to win the title this year, then I guess they have to make that move. Because I don't really know what what happens to the Lakers if they don't win the title and LeBron's like, this is hopeless. Like, does LeBron actually leave? I think LeBron's still pretty great, but we'll see how the rest of the year goes. But I wonder if LeBron eventually hits some sort of H point where it's actually better for the team to try to trade LeBron James and get back whatever you could get back. And hell, it would be the most exciting thing for all of us podcasters and writers out there if we could actually have a LeBron James trade market. That would probably break Twitter for sure. But I've always liked THT. I think we talked about this. I've liked him since back when he was at Simeon, mostly because I was just biased because I sat courtside to watch him go up against, I think it was RJ Barrett one-on-one, and it was just an incredible battle, and I just loved his competitiveness and his ball skill and his defensive intensity. So, and I think he definitely has the playmaking ability in there, and I think he's just been struggling with the increased role and attention and teams knowing to scout on him and stuff like that. But I think he has the ability to work his way through this and eventually get there to being like a good starting caliber guard. So I would definitely want to hold on to him if I'm the Lakers, especially because who the hell else do they have to hold on to? They keep letting go of the good guys that they're developing. And
right.
Austin Reeves is the new GOAT because there has to be a white GOAT for every single Laker team every year. But I don't know if I'm seeing Alex Caruso potential out of him yet. So it's like THT is kind of like their one thing to hold on to for the future. You have to literally have something for the future. If you completely mortgage your future beyond comprehension, 20 years from now, you will be homeless. So it's like you have to, I don't think that analogy makes sense, but you get my point. But you have to at least get something somewhat long-term if you're going to move him.
Right. And the Lakers are not too big to fail. The organization's history over the, 5 or 6 years before they had LeBron James proves that. Right. So it will eventually come back to bite them. It's just the question is, because you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, who's missed a lot of time here, and Anthony Davis is one to do that, right? He'll miss time here and there. So I think that they do kind of need to go for it, but they need to go for it in a way that isn't just for a rental this year. They need a guy for next year as well. And that, I think, is why you hear the Eric Gordon stuff, right? Eric Gordon makes a lot of sense. He's played really well this year. Eric Gordon's another guy. We can just kind of talk about Eric Gordon here as well, and move him within this conversation as the fifth guy that I want to talk about. Eric Gordon would really help them from a shot-making perspective, from a floor spacing perspective, from a defensive perspective on the perimeter. He's the perfect fit. Here's my question. If you're the Houston Rockets, would you rather have Talen Horton-Tucker, or would you rather have the Hornets first round pick that who just acquired that Atlanta just acquired for him? I think I'd rather just have the first round pick. I think it's a more malleable asset that could be more valuable to another team down the road than Talen Horton-Tucker. So I'm just kind of trying to ballpark what is the Lakers move here? Because if they can't even get the best offer for Eric Gordon on the table, who is their target? I'm struggling to come up with a target, I guess, for the Lakers is what I'm
I think Miles Turner has been one of the obvious ones, a completely different role, but he's one that's they've been trying to get him for a while. They tried to get him last year, and I think it was THT not being in the deal kind of blew that up. Same thing with Kyle Lowry. But so, actually, I'm not even going to answer your question. I'm going to ask you another question because you just hit on it. I think it's something always fascinating is the young player versus the draft pick. And I feel like people perceive players losing their value way too fast. I think the car off the lot analogy gets kind of exaggerated when it comes to valuing players, because like when you buy a car, you know exactly what it is, and then it starts to get wear and tear. While with a player, when you draft them, it's like sometimes you're kind of getting a mystery box, and it turns out to be a Bentley, or in this case, like a BMW 4 Series or 5 Series, because I don't know if the 4 Series is a thing that still exists, but like THT could be pretty good, and the Hornets pick is going to be somewhere in the middle of the first round. I think like Horton-Tucker is on track for exactly what you would want your optimal 13th, 14th pick in the draft to be. And the uncertainty of the draft is just, I feel like, is so much more significant than people tend to paint it out to be. So if you even hit on a lottery pick and they turn out to be a starting caliber player, that's generally like a pretty good outcome. So considering that THT is only like 21, 22 years old, he's still really young. And I don't think he's good enough to command a huge salary in the free agency market when he hits it. I just don't really see, I don't see any way that a non-top 10 pick is really more valuable than him, unless you're like clearly trying to make a trade off of that.
Well, the only reason why is that you'd be getting him for this year when he's still not very good. Like he's not a starting caliber player, let's say right now, right? You'd have him for next year when he's 22. And I don't think there's any certainty that he would be a starting caliber player that year. And then you get him for 23, 24, which maybe he would be. Like, I think there's a chance that he'd be a starting caliber player by the time he's 23, 24. But then that's the last year of his contract, and he's an unrestricted free agent after that. So
he has a player option for that year too, right?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but if he does, that's even worse, right? So I think that's why the draft pick is more valuable. It just gives you more time to develop a player that may or may not be a starter. If Talen Horton-Tucker was a starter right now, A, the Lakers probably wouldn't want to move him, but B, it would make a lot more sense for me with the way that his contract went. Like this is kind of why I had Talen Horton-Tucker as like number 45 on my board or something like that. I always figured he would be better for the second team that had him than for the first team. I just thought he was so far away from being a helpful player to an NBA team that first team just wouldn't really have a chance. And I think it's gone about as well as it possibly could have for him early on. And that's a statement on him being a talented guy. I guess that I'm still struggling with what the value proposition behind Talen Horton-Tucker is. And that's why I'm struggling in general to like understand what his value is. And on top of that, you bring up Miles Turner, right? They wanted 2 first-round picks for Miles Turner. Let's say that they value Talen Horton-Tucker in that way, as being worth one of those first-round picks. You could do Talen Horton-Tucker and Kendrick Nunn, and that gets you where you need to be in terms of salary for Miles Turner. The Lakers don't have a first-round pick. They have moved their 2022 first-round pick. They've moved their 2024 first-round pick. They don't have a first-round pick, I believe, until 2026 that they can move out. Now, if you're Indiana, maybe that's what you want. You want the pick to be farther out. After LeBron James is gone, maybe Rich Paul, after LeBron James leaves, pushes Anthony Davis out. So maybe that is the pick that you want. But I think that it's really hard to sell if you're the Indiana Pacers and you want to keep being competitive, which has been their kind of mantra at this point, right? I think it's hard to sell THT and another first-round pick for Miles Turner.
I mean, the one thing is it's a really hard sell on the pick, but the Lakers can only offer a pick that is so far out that like everyone is gone. Like AD would probably be like 37 at that point or whatever it would be. I don't even know how far away 2028 is, but
so it'd be 2026, and it would be he'd be what 30? He'd be in his 30s, but it wouldn't. He'd be 32, something 33, something like that. Right?
He's turning 29 in March, so it would be 4 years from now.
4 years from now. So yeah, 33.
I thought that I kept hearing the 28 pick. I don't know why I had it locked in as a 28 pick, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Real GM right now. The last pick they have out is the 2024 pick.
Okay, so I like that gamble to bet on the Lakers with Anthony Davis, who never stays healthy, 33 years old, whether he's there or just like not good anymore. I love the gamble on that draft pick for Miles is it's weird because like Miles is really well liked by the fan base there, and he's been there really long. So when you're trading him, it's like he's a very institutionalized player, very like ingrained into the identity of this team. But
well, and like on top of that, like you've talked to him, he's like a really, really smart dude too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
really, like I think would fit into a lot of different like locker room cultures, would fit into a lot of different, like he's a very emotionally intelligent human being.
Yeah, he's a very marketable guy. Between like the shot blocking and the dunks when he does get a chance to dunk and his fashion stuff and like his personality and all that. Like he's a very marketable guy. And so he's one of the main people that they brand with the Pacers. And so I think even though he's not the clear number one basketball player on that team, I think Domas is because of the All-Star team and because scoring and assists is usually the top thing. Like Miles is definitely a big part of their brand identity. And so getting back a player that they can't really kind of build the brand around, because that's a huge part of it with Indiana. It's like Indiana, they're motivated by the business side of this more than almost any other team out there. And you see that in the way that Herb Simon talks about how they don't want to blow it up and stuff like that. So I don't know if THT is quite enough, but I think because he plays for the Lakers, he has like just enough of that brand recognition that you maybe could sell him pretty hard. And if you throw him right into the starting lineup and you feed him a ton of shots early on and he's scoring and he's making plays, I could see him being like just enough for them to be willing to make that Miles trade there.
I mean, if the Pacers are willing to take that, they should like drive THT to the airport and fly him first class and get him out of there. Because
Turner's only 25. Like
he makes that team
not that much older.
Drastically better too.
For sure.
Like Miles Turner makes that team drastic. They are immediately the best defense in terms of upside in the NBA. If they have Miles Turner and Anthony Davis protecting the rim, LeBron has actually been okay on defense this year as well. So like you mix those three, that's just enormous upside defensively. I don't think anyone would be able to score on them on the interior. I mentioned Eric Gordon as the fifth guy earlier. Eric Gordon's been really valuable. It's funny, you cover a team in the Boston Celtics, and we're going to transition to them right after we're done with Eric Gordon.
Great Eric Gordon
would be immensely helpful for the Boston Celtics. I think the price is just like a first-round pick for Eric Gordon, and then salary matching. And the salary matching is not insubstantial because he's on about $17 to $18 million a year. But I think that Eric Gordon is the guy that like I would most expect to be moved at the deadline, if only because like all of the pieces are there to move him. He's one of the best perimeter players on the market. They're not going anywhere right now, and he has a year and a half left on this deal. He's still really good. I think they could actually get something of real value for him.